Welcome back to the Sober Witch Life podcast. I don't know about you, but I slept horribly last night. I think I'm rocking on like maybe 3 hours of sleep. Um, and I've struggled with insomnia since I was a child. Um, yeah, since I was a child, but yeah, last night was really rough. But we're not here to talk about insomnia. No, we're here for another episode of the Sober Witch Life podcast. So I hope you've been enjoying these lately. I don't know if you have. If you haven't, you should write me a Yell Talk email and let me know. You can do that. I don't know if I've ever given my email address. I don't even know if this shares an email address, but yeah, you could try me at, God, I don't know, headmistress at illuminateonschool.com. Yeah, maybe I should create one for the show. That might make sense. Probably. Yeah, so we are here to talk about this event that I've got planned later this month, which, I've been sitting here and I've been thinking about it because well, I've been doing a whole bunch of writing about it because I put the press release together for it yesterday. But I just been thinking about how kind of crazy it is, right? I started planning this event in July, right? And I think all of you know that I've been really actively promoting the book this year. Published the book in March and been actively on the book tour. And so in July, I started planning this event. And it's finally here, right? So let's say July, August, September, right? I guess we're at the end of it. So I've been like waiting about 3 months. And it's not just me, right? There's some other witches that are involved in this. And so it's not just like and some other witches that are authors that are involved in this. And it's not just witches that are authors. And we're not just going to get together to read from our books, and we're not just going to do like, some witchcraft and some recovery stuff, um, which is kind of like wild and crazy. Like that in and of itself would be kind of like really, really cool. Um, but I'm sharing today, and what I'm talking to you about today is just like how spirit works, like how unbelievably, incredibly cool spirit works. It's just, yeah, mind-blowingly cool, right? And so there's this whole event just has all of these different examples that are kind of like built into it. And so I want to kind of call these out. And so the two other authors named Amanda and Patient, right? Amanda and Patience themselves. Yes, they're witches. They're magical women. Um, and, that in and of itself is pretty cool. But they're also in recovery, right? They're also in recovery. Um, so I'm going to share this story of kind of how spirit blessed all of us with this event. And it all started with a walk, right? So I can't remember. I think it might have it might have been the end of June. Might have been the end of June. Might have been the end of June. Maybe it was just that week. It might have been right before we left for Maine. Dan and I had just visited Passenger Recovery, right? This is the recovery community organization that we've partnered with in Hamtramck. And we decided it was a beautiful day out, and we said, let's go take a walk and just see what else is around in the area. And so we're walking the street of Hamtramck, and just about like maybe a block or two down from Passenger Recovery, we see that there's a bookstore. And there's a handful of things, places, locations that we are always going to kind of walk in. Metaphysical stores, any kind of like art shop, any kind of like really eclectic place, an antique store, and bookstores, no brainers, right? So we walk in. We both wanted to go inside. And the bookstore's name was Book Suey, right? So cool name just to start. And I noticed something that was really different. I started to kind of walk around and look at all the shelves, and this like store was different. On the shelves, this wasn't like This wasn't like Barnes and Noble, right? And I'd been to a couple of other of the local bookstores as well, and it still felt a bit different because against this one wall, like, I don't know, I think it was like maybe 4 bookshelves, it was local authors. Okay, like local authors. And so I thought this was like really phenomenal, right? And so there happened to be somebody that was working there, and I just stumbled over, right? Because here it is, just a couple of months from when I'd written a book. And I asked, how do you get on these shelves? And they proceeded to talk about how Booksui was not your average bookstore. They were a co-op, meaning they were a cooperative. They were owned by multiple owners, right? And those owners, right? So the community of these owners would often curate and bring in local authors and have those local authors up on the shelves. And so I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Like, that's really amazing. Like, I respected that a lot. And so the woman I was chatting with, name was Kat, and I said, what would it be like to like hold an event? Like, I'm an author. Like, I would love to know what, the space looks like. It's pretty decent size. Like, would it be like to hold an event? And so she'd given me her email address. And funny story about that. She gave me her email address and she said, it's super easy. Just email me what you're thinking. And so we grabbed a couple of like poetry books, like little tiny poetry books, and a couple of other things. And I actually signed up as a member because I think it was like really inexpensive, like $15 or something like that. And got a coffee mug. And we went on our way. And the funny story is she wrote her email address down on a bookmark and I couldn't find it. I like couldn't find it. So I was in a panic. And so I found Booksui's email address online and emailed them. And finally, and lucky enough for me, Kat also managed to check that email address. And so we went and talked back and forth about a book event and decided that this would be the location of my very first local book event, right? So, yeah, like just stumbling into a bookstore on a random, I think it was maybe Friday. I don't know, maybe it was a Saturday. Who knows? Spirit takes me to the location of my very first book event, which is later this month, right? Beautiful. So let's talk about Amanda, one of the other authors, because the story of that is just as spirit driven. And so we're not in Hamtramck for this one, though. This one has me in Cleveland. And this one is actually, gosh, this one would have been a year and a half ago. So not this past couple of months ago, a year and a half ago. Dan and I were heading out to Pittsburgh, and we decided to make a stop in Cleveland to go to the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft, which is right there in Cleveland. This is an amazing guy by the name of Steve owns it. And right next door, as we finish up, we end up in this little tiny used bookstore. And let's see, Buckland. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find that bookstore's name. And so we end up in this little tiny bookstore and corner of the sky bookstore. And we get to chatting and it's like used books, right? But she's got a handful of new books and I see they're all local authors. And so I pick up the back of this one book and it's a fiction and it sounds pretty interesting. It's not my normal cup of tea, but it sounded interestingly enough. And I wanted to support the bookstore and a local author. So I bought it. I take it back and lo and behold, I really enjoyed the book. It had all of this like really intense kind of story in it, like, and a lot of story around addiction and recovery in it as well, like that struggle that many of us go through around kind of this the suffering of, still being in active addiction, knowing that we should let it go, but not being ready for it. And I was just like, wow, man, this is someone that has totally been there before, right? That they've totally been there. And so, um, I finished the book and I was like, wow, that was really good. And I realized at the back of the book, the author has their email and that they're local to Cleveland. So I was like, hey, why not? And so I emailed them, told them I enjoyed their book, and I get an email back. And so we email back and forth. And lo and behold, she's also a witch. So not only is she in recovery, does yoga, all this amazing stuff, but she's also a witch. And so we kind of become fast friends. And at some point later that year, this is like a year ago, as I'm traveling back over, to Pittsburgh to visit a friend again, I stop and have coffee and we meet and we hit it off. And so when I knew this event was coming up and I knew that she had this story, and she wrote, had also released a second book that I had picked up already that again touched on it. I just knew that I wanted her to join me here at this event. And so she is, right? And so you would think again, right? Here's spirit showing up again in another interesting way in life, to kind of bless this beautiful event. And so when I was talking to Kat about, how to coordinate the event, she was like, bringing in other authors is a really beautiful way to kind of really, show up for the community. And I said, I would really love, another sober author. Like, do you know of anybody, right? Like just somebody else that's in recovery. And she said, I think I do. So she gave me this individual's name. And so I contact this individual, right? And we go back and forth and we chat. And lo and behold, they've been in recovery. I can't remember, don't quote me for how many years, but it's like, I think 3 years. They've been in recovery. And they also, and Kat didn't know this, right? Because let's be real, many of us witches keep the witch side of us in the broom closet. They also are a witch, right? They also are a witch. And so that's amazing, which cool, great. But you want to know like the icing on the cake on this particular one. The date of the event is their birthday. So spirit again, showing up, connecting, and validating how incredibly blessed this particular event is supposed to be. And so I think this is all sorts of delightful, and I am just giddy with, glee and giggles and all sorts of great stuff. And so, Amanda and I are chatting and talking about the excitement, and Patience and I are chatting and talking about the excitement. And here I am, I think it was probably like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, at an event, right? There's this really beautiful, amazing local community event, like art event that happens. And who do I run into and see for the first time in this very large event, like thousands upon thousands of people? I'm walking down the block and we're there for 45 minutes at the most. And there's Patience who I've never met in person and I happen to see, right? And so spirit is just over and over again showing up to just prove, show, and validate the beauty, the synchronicities, and the spirit that's just aligning this event to happen, right? So I gave her a hug. We just laughed about it. It was really wonderful and beautiful, right? So I there's never been this moment as we've been preparing for this event that I didn't think it was going to happen, because I knew and I could feel that spirit's hand has been in it this entire time. And I'm really lucky and blessed because we are also going to have Dan doing some live art during the event too. He'll be painting while we're doing this, and we're we're going to sell raffle tickets and auction, raffle it off at the end. So somebody will get to go ahead and be able to walk away with this beautiful piece of art, at the end of the night, or, if he's got to finish it. And we're going to use those funds for the Sovereign Phoenix, right? So before I wrap up and talk about this, though, I do want to talk about what I'm going to be talking about there, because I've shared, and I think maybe I've talked about this before. Maybe I have, but we're going to be talking about this curse of addiction on witches. And it's really been sitting heavy on me a lot lately. I'm finding more and more often, God, especially, I don't know why it is, just this last week or two, Spirit's screaming really loudly to me that I've got to be speaking up. I've got to be talking more about this. And we're not talking about just even on the podcast. They're I've been growing my Instagram followers just so I can go live and start talking and spreading this more. So not hiding, because it needs to be shared. There is this curse of addiction, right? So many of us witches that are out there are born with sensitivity. I don't think that that's going to come as a shock to any of you that are listening to hear that. We're tuned in. We can feel it. And with what the world is going on, we're going to feel all this uncomfortability, right? We're going to feel all of this hatred. We're going to feel all of this anger. We're going to feel all of this evil, for lack of a better term, turmoil, discontent, right? We're going to feel our ancestors being angry. We're going to feel the uproar, right? When you don't understand that, when there are those of us that don't understand still, when we're being awakened, right? Or those of us that are, maybe we're starting to understand, or maybe we have stepped into recovery and, have not been numbing anymore, right? Now we're more sensitive. These sometimes I say all this to say sometimes these don't feel like gifts. They feel like burdens. They feel like they're too much, right? And sometimes these are the reasons why we did numb. I say this to say sometimes the sensitivity can feel like a curse, right? And sometimes it's not just alcohol, drugs that we'll turn to. It can be sugar. It can be codependency. It can be overwork. It could be shopping. It can be becoming that overbearing parent that you never expected to turn into. Yeah. All just to quiet that overwhelm. And recovery forces us to face the truth. It helps us to see the very things that we thought was, that was breaking us is actually the doorway to our magic. That overwhelm, that hypersensitivity is the doorway to our magic. That when we can learn how to listen to it, when we can learn how to pause, and then today you heard me say I've been tired. I mean, if I could tell you the gnarliness that has come up today, old me, it would have been it was a rough day, but it would have been a wicked day. I mean, I have heard some gnarly entities talk to me today. Yeah. Yeah. That's a bit of what I'm going to talk to you. I mean, I don't have an hour. It's probably a topic that's worth a whole hour. And thus far, I've gifted it in all of the times that I've talked about it, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. At some point, when I get ready to do my doctorate, I'll have a whole dissertation. I'll write a book about it. I know that's for darn sure. Yeah. But my hope is that when people do show up to this event, when they walk into Book Suey that night, when they look around and they see these other people there, right? That they'll see someone that they know. Maybe they'll never have met them before, but they'll see someone that they know, right? They'll feel seen themselves, they'll feel connected, and they'll leave feeling a little bit of a spark, feeling like their story, what they want to say, what they have to say matters, right? Because the truth is, and this is the beautiful thing, and why, I chose to write, why I know Amanda chose to write, why I know that even Patience chooses to write and to share these stories, is because storytelling is spell work. Yeah, speaking aloud is magic. And I share that almost every single circle. If you've ever sat there with me in circle, I'll tell you, you're never obligated to speak, but sharing, it's a gift you give other people, but it is magic in and of itself. So is listening. Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited about it. Oh, I'm excited anytime I get together with a bunch of other witches. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful thing. So yeah, I don't know when you'll be listening to this, but if you happen to be in the Metro Detroit area and it's before October 18th, you should check out the event on Eventbrite. Yeah, it's called Inked and Unbound. So till next time, my dear friends, I hope I'll leave you with this. If you've never written any of your story down, maybe just start by writing the title of your first chapter. What would you call it? Until next time, my loves. Much love from me.